Another year of genocide, another ceasefire agreement full of unknowns. For President Donald Trump, this deal was less about peace in Gaza and more about the peace prize he never got. Can Israel's billionaire backers shift the narrative on the genocide in the US? The Ellison family is certainly trying. Portuguese media couldn't resist the allure of the far right. And now, what was on the fringe is ever more mainstream. This past week was packed with breaking news. The agreement on the first phase of the latest Gaza peace deal and major developments in the US media space. We'll return to the peace deal later. We start with the big news in the US media landscape. For the past couple of months, the billionaire father-son duo of Larry and David Ellison have been making deals involving major media brands. Last month, they bought out Paramount, the TV and film production company that also owns CBS News. This week, they made a smaller acquisition, an online news outlet called The Free Press. It led, however, to a bigger headline. Its editor, Bari Weiss, who once said she would be happy to claim the title of a Zionist fanatic, is now also editor-in-chief of CBS News. The Ellisons are not done. They're in talks to buy TikTok's US operations and are eyeing another media giant, Warner, the parent company of CNN. These moves aren't just about the Ellisons' growing media empire. They connect directly to another major story in the US, the steep decline in public support for Israel. The Ellisons have made clear they see a role for themselves in shoring up that support, and it's evident they view the media as a key battleground. This is a story about the United States, a story about its media.
Today I'm doing something different. It's an announcement, and one that I'm so excited to be making.
It's a story about US foreign policy and war, about capitalism, billionaires, the power of the presidency, and the relentless drive to control the narrative.
So I'll get right to it. This morning, the Free Press is joining Paramount.
The purchase of The Free Press, an online media company founded and fronted by Bari Weiss, a polarizing columnist turned podcaster and media entrepreneur, was more than just a startup being bought out by a media giant like Paramount. It also triggered a shakeup in the editorial leadership at one of the United States' most recognizable news organizations.
I'm now editor-in-chief of CBS News, working with new colleagues on the programs that have impacted American culture for generations.
This announcement could have come at any point during the past month as the deal was being finalized. But the timing seemed deliberate, coinciding with the foreign policy issue currently dominating US politics: Israel, the 2-year genocide that has just eased in Gaza, and Washington's active role in that genocide.
So Paramount and CBS had a lot of different days that they could have chosen. They actively chose to announce it on October 6th. And while a lot of the world understands that October 7th has a certain symbolic significance to it,
reports Israelis today remember the more than 1,000 who died in the Hamas attack.
So does the day October 6th, because it stands in for history, context. It stands in for understanding how we got to where we are. And so I think there is a sort of stomping on history implied in the choice of making October 6th the day.
This was a message and a signal to mainstream media and American audiences about the direction in which corporate media in the US is heading. Bari Weiss has been a very controversial figure in the media landscape, and now she's sitting in the editor's chair at CBS News. For the last several years, she has targeted quote-unquote woke individuals. She has come after those who say that a genocide is underway in Gaza. She has been part of a right-wing ensemble that has labeled anyone who criticizes the state of Israel as an anti-Semite.
Bari's North Star is, and has been for at least 20 years, and probably her entire life, Israel, and being Israel's strongest soldier in the American media discourse.
Now you have it on the left too, where Israel comes to replace Jew as the sort of diabolical controller of all the world's ills, right?
I think if there is one issue that she is completely sincere in her fixation on, and that she will certainly want to shape the coverage of in a more right-leaning direction at CBS, it is Israel and the way that Israel's war on the Palestinians is covered here.
Bari Weiss's avowed support of Israel does not make her an outlier in the US media landscape. To the contrary, she is in the company of a plethora of journalists and commentators who share similar views.
Israel had me at hello. In times of crisis, I know where I will be when the Jewish state is under threat.
Across US newsrooms, a striking number of journalists have backgrounds in pro-Israel lobbying or direct ties to the Israeli government and military. Weiss herself worked in one of those newsrooms, the New York Times, but she resigned in 2020, claiming a, quote, illiberal environment. The following year, she launched The Free Press as a Substack newsletter, which quickly grew into the platform's top revenue earner. It was there that Weiss, as CEO and editor-in-chief, oversaw coverage that repeatedly downplayed or denied evidence of Israeli war crimes in Gaza, including articles refuting the famine there. The argument in one of those pieces was that images of starving children were disinformation because those children had pre-existing health conditions.
I don't know how you produce a story about the so-called myth of famine when we are literally seeing it with our own eyes. When we have international aid organizations laying out the facts and telling us there is a man-made famine in Gaza, where other countries are trying to send aid and they're being met with blockades. And in the face of all of that, you want to create this idea that a famine is made up?
At the outlet Weiss now leads as editor-in-chief, articles like these would never clear the bar. They would fail most of CBS News' editorial standards. And yet, Weiss has been installed and seems untouchable, not least because of the man backing her, David Ellison. The son of Larry Ellison, one of the many tech oligarchs in the United States, David is the chairman and CEO of Paramount Skydance Corporation. And together with his father, he has driven an ambitious push into the US media and information space. With their vast wealth and considerable political influence, the Ellisons have become central figures in the fight back by American supporters of Israel against soaring negative sentiment.
So Larry Ellison, who's the founder of Oracle, is on and off the richest man in the world. Looks fantastic, as many billionaires do. Several years ago, he became the largest donor ever to Friends of the IDF, which is an American charity that directly supports the IDF militarily. He has said the greatest honor in his life is being able to do that sort of thing.
I feel a deep emotional connection to the state of Israel and the Israeli people.
We discovered through recent reporting at DropSite that Larry Ellison has in the past played a vetting role for the Israeli government. We obtained emails where they're discussing Marco Rubio, or the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, says, did you get a chance to meet him yet? Did you talk about Israel? Larry Ellison writes back, he will be a great friend to Israel.
Among Ellison's many acts of friendship towards Israel, there is his leading role in the probable acquisition of TikTok's US operations. It's a deal that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described like this when he met with social media influencers in the US.
But we have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged. And the most important ones are the social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is followers. TikTok. TikTok, number one.
TikTok has been one of the most important disseminators of essentially the pro-Palestinian perspective in the United States. There are plausible arguments to be made that TikTok has driven the major opinion realignment among younger Americans, who are the ones most likely to use it. And so I certainly understand why Netanyahu and his supporters in the United States might see this as an opportunity to change TikTok's algorithm to, let's say, favor more pro-Israel propaganda.
It doesn't even have to be, pro-Israel content in order for it to be beneficial to what Israel says is its geostrategic goal. I did a piece at DropSite where we obtained kind of internal survey and focus group data that the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs had paid for, trying to figure out how they could turn Israel's image around. And their conclusion was, when we are compared to basically anything else, people don't like us. But if people compare us to Iran or Hamas specifically, they prefer us to those two. And also, they believe, particularly in Europe, that there are too many Muslims running around. So what they need to do is get people angrier at Muslims. And now you will have TikTok, CBS News, with the ability to go out and just highlight every crime committed by anybody who even looks like a Muslim anywhere in the world.
With phase one of a ceasefire deal now agreed upon, the question isn't just what happens next, but how it will be reported, public support for Israel has plunged in the US, making the media narrative more important than ever. With a major film and TV studio like Paramount now owned by the Ellisons, CBS News, under the editorial direction of Bari Weiss, whose output has sanitized Israel's genocide, and TikTok and possibly even a media company like Warner and CNN on the table, it's worth asking, what version of events will reach the public? And how likely is it that Israel, with the help of its American backers, can reclaim the support it has lost?
I don't think that Israel is going to be able to regain legitimacy in the eyes of Americans. Look, we have been scrolling through a genocide for the last 2 years. We see images come across our feeds, come across our televisions, and for the first time in the time that I have been in politics, you're seeing poll numbers come out with people that are over the age of 50 who have absolutely shifted their opinion of the state of Israel. There's no changing opinions around that. So I don't care how many media companies the Ellison family want to buy up, it is not going to change public opinion.
This past week, Israel and Hamas agreed to the first phase of a ceasefire deal in Gaza, bringing an end to 2 years of genocide. There was elation in the region and beyond. For Donald Trump, it was an opportunity for self-congratulation, with both he and his allies emphasizing how pivotal he was in making things happen. Tariq Nafi has been following the story.
For 2 years, Palestinians had been waiting for this moment. For Donald Trump, it was also a moment for a renewed round of self-promotion. As news emerged that an agreement was close, his team ensured he'd be the first to make the announcement. A photographer got a shot of this note handed to Trump during a televised meeting. It said, "We need you to approve a Truth Social post so you can be the first to announce the deal."
Yeah, I was just given a note by the Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East.
Trump then took to Fox News for a victory lap.
Congratulations, sir. Can you give us more of the details?
Well, thank you very much, John. It's a great honor to be involved.
This is, of course, a deal that could have happened at any point after Trump took office, preventing the loss of many, many lives. During that time, Donald Trump stood by Israel as it expanded its genocide, decimating large parts of the Gaza Strip. A number of factors are behind why the deal has come together now. But at least part of the motivation seemed to be Trump's own desire to be hailed as a peacemaker, one worthy of being awarded a Nobel Prize. And Trump's allies and lieutenants, like Secretary of State Marco Rubio, seem to have understood exactly what the president was looking for.
One day, perhaps the entire story will be told about the events of yesterday, but suffice it to say, it's not an exaggeration that none of it would have been possible without the President of the United States.
There was also this bizarrely sycophantic AI-generated image put out by the Israeli Prime Minister's office. In the end, however, Donald Trump didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize. The fawning messages kept on coming, though, with Israeli opposition leader Benny Gantz saying no gold medal will ever truly do justice or reward you adequately for the lives you have saved. All eyes are now on Gaza and on whether Israel will honour the ceasefire agreement. If past experience is any indication, Trump will have to follow through to make sure it holds.
Thanks, Tariq. Portugal heads to the polls this weekend for local elections that could reshape the country's political map. Chega, a far-right party, once on the fringes, is leading the race, and its leader, André Ventura, has become one of the country's most recognisable political figures. Portugal hasn't witnessed the mainstreaming of extremist rhetoric like Ventura's in 50 years, not since the country rose up and overthrew the far-right dictatorship of António de Oliveira Salazar. Ventura's rise didn't happen solely in Parliament, but through television as well. Years of carefully crafted TV appearances and viral sound bites, from his early days as a football pundit to his current role as a political showman, built his profile. Portuguese media amplified him, prioritizing ratings over accountability. As voters head to the polls, one question remains. Has Chega turned airtime into growing political power? The Listening Post's Ryan Coles now on how Portugal's media built the far-right's momentum.
Precisamente com André Ventura, que é o convidado desta noite.
André Ventura, boa noite.
Boa noite.
Doutor André Ventura, muito obrigada desde já por ter aceitado este convite do NOW. We see him daily. He hops from channel to channel. It feels like he has reserved a room on every television channel, because he's always there. He doesn't leave.
André Ventura, the man dominating the airwaves in Portugal, is the leader of Chega, a far-right party whose name translates to enough. Since entering national politics in 2019, Ventura has built his profile on a solid foundation of far-right themes: nationalism,
amar este símbolo é não ter medo de enfrentar aqueles que querem destruir Portugal.
Islamophobia,
para que não restem dúvidas, o Chega não quer mais mesquitas em Portugal.
Pushing shock policies.
Estou a dizer que quem é abusador de menores deve ser castrado.
For decades, Portugal appeared to be insulated from Europe's far-right surge. Its stable two-party system and the legacy of a revolution that toppled Europe's longest dictatorship had staved off political extremism. Or so it seemed. In last May's snap election, Chega's message resonated with 22.8% of the voters, making Ventura the leader of the opposition.
They are clearly a populist party. With some conservative ideas.
Nossa matriz é judaico-cristã, só que hoje alguns não querem perceber isso.
But very often they also have ideas that are very much against the right-wing position towards the economy, for example. So it seems that they're very much responsive to what the populist chatter is and the street concerns are.
Iremos juntos, lutando por aquilo em que creemos. Uma Europa com menos imigração.
Offering a very simple, oversimplified, usually with an outsider to blame as a solution for these problems that are, of course, very complex and hard to solve.
And this attracts audiences. There was a recent study by the Universidade Nova showing that between 2019 and 2024, André Ventura gave more interviews than the then leader of the opposition. I was the parliamentary correspondent in 2019, when he was the only Chega MP, with 1.7% of the votes. And already back then, there was media pressure for Ventura to be part of parliamentary coverage.
Portanto, estes números mostram que, de alguma forma, a comunicação social e as televisões em particular, desculpem que vos diga, gostam do efeito André Ventura e do efeito Chega.
He was seen as an asset by the media, especially by the TV channels, and the radio stations also succumbed to this phenomenon.
It is well known that talking about André Ventura guarantees large audiences and high click rates. Journalists thought he would be an easy voice to have on, but they forgot one detail. He already had a lot of media practice and was very familiar with the playing field.
Long before he got into politics, André Ventura was a football pundit. Football is the most watched programming on Portuguese television. In 2024, some football matches drew in more than 5 million viewers. And with those large audiences came the post-match analysis. Shows like PM Riste or Mercado, infotainment built entirely around the game. Ventura cut his teeth on these shows. His theatrical, sometimes aggressive style embodied the channel that hosted him, CMTV, a network built on the coverage of sexual scandals, crime, and football, the same topics that sell headlines in its sister outlet, Correio da Manhã, Portugal's leading tabloid. Ventura was a columnist there, too. These were his training grounds, outlets where controversy and spectacle were rewarded.
The fact that he started off as a sports commentator makes sense. Here in Portugal, we have very lively debates on these shows. Ventura used to throw violent, aggressive personal attacks against opponents of other football clubs. And he took this style over to the political arena, breaking away from a certain tradition of dialogue in Portuguese politics. The word liar is not used in Portuguese politics, and Ventura used it last year against Prime Minister Luís Montenegro, quite shamelessly in Parliament.
When this man entered politics and eventually landed in Parliament, he brought a media know-how that very few others possessed. That came as a surprise for news audiences, especially for what I call the sofa generation. They supposedly do not know Ventura's politics, but they know him as the man who yells at the elites like they have never experienced before, and they sit on their sofas, satisfied with that.
But Ventura isn't just yelling at fellow politicians, he's attacking journalists too, a profession already under strain.
Desculpe lá, é o esgoto em que se tornou algum jornalismo português.
According to a recent survey, almost half of the country's journalists are burnt out. 40% work on low-paid, fixed-term contracts, and between 2017 and 2024, hundreds have left the profession altogether. That exodus has given populism more space to spread. Underpaid and overstretched, the journalists who remain struggle to deliver fact-based reporting and counter misinformation.
A resposta fundamental ao populismo e à extrema-direita é mais e melhor jornalismo. E o jornalismo faz com factos, não se faz com a opinião, não é?
Com redações que estão mais pobres.
Newsrooms have huge financial constraints and a real shortage of resources. The entire environment is geared towards the decline of journalism. In this climate, there is one group of people who have gained prominence, even though they often create further polarization. These are the so-called commentators.
São os chamados comentadores.
It's much cheaper to get people into a table and talk about something that they didn't really study and they're not an expert on, but they have some ideas about. And that's easier and faster to do than actually doing an investigation or presenting the facts.
Vou dar exemplo. Os ciganos continuam mais de 80% a viver de subsídios. E eu sei que há racismo e tal, mais de 80% vivem de subsídios.
Mas esse número é fidedigno, não é?
Very much of what the recipe of success of Chega and André Ventura is exactly getting people to argue with them on the topics and the narratives that they want to keep in the agenda.
Chega initially agreed to speak with us, then pulled out. Like every political party, it has its eyes on Sunday's municipal elections. For the first time, Chega tops the polls. If it wins, voters will get a taste of what Chega governance looks like. But regardless of the result, André Ventura has already secured a major victory, the media attention that propelled him to this point.
Just after the last elections, studies showed that the news coverage had a quantifiable political impact. André Ventura was polling about 19 to 20%, and he ended up reaching 23%. If Chega now managed to win some 30 city halls, that would represent an earthquake in Portuguese politics, as it would mean that Ventura would have reached governance by proxy, that is, by governing through local municipalities. This could represent a significant reconfiguration of the Portuguese political system.
The media has pushed and amplified this image that he is an alternative, giving him that much relevance and importance. Journalism didn't take that step back of thinking that journalism is also about public service. It is not always about just getting the public what they want.
And finally, if you haven't seen the viral clip of CNN analyst Van Jones turning the deaths of Palestinian children into a punchline, we're showing it here not just for what that moment revealed, but for what's come to light since.
Iran and Qatar have come up with a disinformation campaign that they are running through TikTok and Instagram that is massive. If you are a young person, you open up your phone and all you see is dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby, Diddy, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby.
As telling as Jones's callous humor was the laughter in the studio from host Bill Maher, New York Times Pulitzer-winning columnist Tom Friedman, and the audience. Online, Jones was torn apart, so much so that he apologized twice, saying his point was about foreign influence campaigns, like the ones he attributed without evidence to Iran and Qatar. Less than a week later, reporting from Dropsite News has made clear why Jones purports to know so much about propaganda drives in the United States. He's been hired as a mentor on a new journalism fellowship, whose founder says it was created to help Israel win the information war. Turns out, when Van Jones talks about foreign propaganda, he's speaking from experience.